Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Polly Podcast. My name is Torkel and the written versions of these episodes can be found over at the blog at Pollyverse.com. So, welcome to episode number 5. And like I said last week, we're still going along with catching up on the blog posts. So, this is the 5th blog post, and we got 2 more after that. But what this one is about is a little something called sampletext. It's an old project that's slowly ongoing that I want to talk a little bit about today. So, what started as my attempt at a very niche self-made digital design has now finally found some kind of a home over on Instagram. Instagram poetry. That's right. Sampletext is Instagram poetry. The original inspiration for sampletext exactly came from that. It came from Instagram poetry. In its modern form, it came from Instagram poetry. But the original inspiration was from those 2 words, sample and text, popping up on things like Microsoft Publisher and video editing software when you're adding a title, font, and things like that. I just thought that was funny, having sample text. And it tracks back to days of using Photoshop. And, when you go on websites to download fonts or things like that, and it always says sample text instead of writing an actual word. And then it also kind of tracks back to vaporwave aesthetics that we talked about in one of the earlier episodes. I kind of felt that it had some sort of a kinship with vaporwave. So I'm sure that you've encountered some of those before if you work with computers and things like that. And at first, what I wanted to do with sample text was prove to myself basically that I could create an original design from scratch with experimental poetry and stories and equally eccentric and crazy art. So because I think I was sending out some poems and artwork to different zines and journals, and I just thought it was really cool. I remember my partner at the time showed me what was it called? Oh my god, I'm having mind blank. Spam zine. God, I've talked about it in another blog post. I'll talk about it again in the future. But Spam zine, they're like my favorite zine and one of my favorite publishers. They stopped doing the zine recently. They moved it to online. But they're so cool. Like when I saw their physical zine copies, I was amazed that, poetry could culminate into that sort of a form. It was really, really interesting. Just as like a creative project, I didn't think about it as something to, make something out of, just something to vent creativity into, basically. So I saw that, and that was one of the big inspirations for sure. And I was sending out my own work, like I said. So I thought, I wonder if I could create something, because I was doing a lot of Photoshop and things like that, because that's sort of what I started with, is video editing and Photoshop and things in the sort of digital image manipulation art world. So I wanted to put together a zine, basically. It's a long way of saying that. And all this sort of took place during the peak of Luke and I's collaborative efforts in England. And Luke, as you may remember, is one of the original founders of Pollyverse and the Polly story, the starter of the Polly story. And so sampletext became a portal into Pollyverse. That was the idea behind it. So it was stories and poems from the very characters of Pollyverse themselves. That's how he wrote it. That's how he wrote the first issue, the first volume. And I only ever made 1 volume of it. And it, as I said, it entirely featured pieces by both Luke and myself, and that's all. And we did a few as ourselves, and then the rest we did as different characters that we chose, who are characters that appear in Pollyverse stories. So yeah, that's what it was. And I was still dipping my toes into the writing world at that point because, like I said, I started off with digital media kind of things, and then, I moved on to starting my degree in animation and everything, which is actually, funnily enough, is when I started writing more. But a zine was a really cool way to tie digital art forms in with writing to make me feel more comfortable with writing, because it's kind of daunting just to write something and put it out into the world. I don't always see poetry and things like that as a personal experience like a lot of people do, love poems and things like that about anxiety and all different personal issues, or issues, not necessarily issues, but you know what I mean. I don't always see it like that, of course. It's about whatever you want it to be about, but I didn't really fully understand that. And I didn't know how to explore that. But the zine gave me a good opportunity to do that with something that I was more comfortable with, which is images. So I could, write things to go with images. So that made sense to me. Which is, another form of poetry in itself. If you do the opposite, you can write responses to images and, responses to your environment, landscape poetry and things like that. All sorts of avenues with writing and poetry. You can basically do anything. And it was the perfect opportunity to sort of find a voice and rhythm for myself with writing, for sure. And I had a lot of digital art already that I thought would be perfect to go along with it. I just had to edit it even more to make it fit within the right, what's it called? Canvas sizes, document sizes, to fit it in to the form that I wanted. Even though this is just a digital zine, you still need to have, the sizing correct, and then some kind of a consistency throughout it. So I had to edit the images and create interesting layouts and things like that. And personally, I think I went crazy with it. It's very much just like a weird art project. It's really hard to read. A lot of, some pages are just crossed out. I just, crossed them out, and I did contrasting colors to make it hard to read and things like that. Also, I just read the book, my favorite book, The House of Leaves, and that was a theme in The House of Leaves, so I loved that. They would write things upside down and things like that, which I also did, and side to side, and you make it difficult for the reader to read it, so you have to focus on certain parts and things like that, which is another thing about poetry, for sure, where you lay it out in certain ways to make people read it a certain way. Because, when you're reading poetry out aloud, you're doing it in a certain way to convey the message. But if you're just putting it on paper, then you can sometimes get that similar effect by the way that you've laid it out on the paper, and the way that you've written it, word selection and things. So I experimented with that, basically. And I went very much overboard, but it was a lot of fun. So yeah. And if you do want to view Volume 1, it is on the sampletext Instagram, which I'll leave a link to in the description of wherever you're listening to this. Maybe Spotify or YouTube. They're the two main ones I cater for. And here we go. So I'm reading along the script, of course, again. I created original digital arts to go along with each issue that I emailed out, because I did it as a pre-order kind of thing for any friends that were interested. So there was only a few, full high definition copies that I sent out to people, and I created personalized pages for them. I think based on something that they maybe told me, or I can't remember. But, it gave it the little personal touch, because it wasn't getting printed or anything, so I thought that would be a cool little thing to do. But I uploaded the base copy on Instagram. You can flick through. It's in 2 different parts, because I think it's 20 pages or so. So it's on there. It's just going to sit on there and stay on there if anyone's interested. But after the release of Volume 1, basically sample text died, sadly. It had served its purpose to me, and I was really happy with what I'd done. I had achieved what I wanted to achieve. I showed myself that I could make something like this, and it helped me progress with writing and digital art and all those things as well. It was good practice, good project. But even though it had died, I couldn't help feeling that there was potential for something more there. So after about a year, I tried writing, planning, and creating digital art for a new volume, volume 2, and even a volume 3. But I wanted to involve other writers and artists this time, to not just have Luke and I writing the whole thing, to try to, reach out to anyone who's interested. But other projects sort of got in the way, and I lost the motivation to create it without any clear goal or format for it. Like I said, the original motivation, which I realize now, was to just prove to myself that I could do something like that and to test out my creativity in writing and digital forms. So I did that, and then I was sort of over it. But then, some years later, sampletext finally found its new home among the tragic, beautiful, and dramatic world of Instagram poetry. So what it is now is it's a place where I can sporadically outlet some of my stranger thoughts and creations in a post-by-post format, somewhat aesthetically, of course. And this method has made it a lot easier to collaborate with individuals on the singular posts on Instagram. And it doesn't even have to necessarily be attached to an individual's name if they don't want to. It's, I see it as very open to anything, any style, any kind of just, weird progressive, I guess, things. I feel like progressive isn't even the right word, just I don't like using the word avant-garde, but, some weird shit, just whatever's interesting, and what probably wouldn't get published in most other places is what I'm interested in. So Instagram's sort of the perfect place for that. I've accepted quite a few. It's mainly my own, because I was my own posts. I was putting my own writing up there and then doing digital artwork to go with the post. You can sort of scroll through sometimes. I do a little side by side of the writing and the art and different things like that, experimenting with it a little bit. And I've also accepted writing from people, little poems, and then I've made a digital art to go along with it, and then, check to make sure they're okay with it, if they like the style, and posted those as well. So I really like doing that. And I'm definitely open to accepting digital art as well in the future. I've actually posted some, 1 or 2, that other people have made. So I'm definitely open to accepting that, and then not even necessarily attaching writing to it. It doesn't have to always be the writing and the art. It can be just the art sometimes. I don't know if I would just do writing. I think I'd always add a little image to go with it for sure. But that's what sampletext is now. It's a place where I can share my own weird thoughts and poems that I don't really have anywhere else to put, because they don't really match with other themes or anything. And also where other people can send in weird things that they're experimenting with, for sure. So it's still pretty new, because I haven't been posting a lot. It's sort of just whenever I find something, whenever I get something new that I like, and I've just upload it. I've got quite a few on the backlog now. I've been writing a lot of bigger projects, but I do have quite a few that I want to post, some from other people as well. But yeah, it's still finding its format and finding its feet. But if Instagram poetry interests you, well, it is quite different from a lot of Instagram poetry, but it is Instagram poetry, so check it out. And send a message if you want to collaborate or add your own little piece into the catalog. I'll definitely take a look at it and maybe post it. So, yeah, that's sample text. Just wanted to let that be known. Tell the people that it exists, kind of thing. And that's all I've got for this episode. So, thank you for listening through. And next week, I will be giving you another little update on the novel that I talked about in 2 episodes ago. Another little snippet from that too. And then we're almost at the end of the blog post, so then there will be entirely new episodes coming out, up-to-date ones, and new posts on the blog as well. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I might just see you next time. Bye-bye.